Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be making Landjäger, and I'm excited. We're going to take you through the fermentation, the smoking, the drying, and the tasting. So let's get started. First thing I did was got some natural hog casings ready by rinsing them out, soaking them in water, and then occasionally changing out the water just to get that saltiness out of it. And once we did that, we just set that to the side. For this recipe, and don't worry, I've got a link in the description box below for a printable version of this recipe. You can adjust the quantities. You got to check it out, twoguysinacooler.com. We're going to be using a combination of pork bat fat, lean pork, and some lean beef. Now, I already had my pork and beef and fat already cut up, so I'm just weighing out the appropriate measurements. I think in this case we're making 4 or 5 pounds or something like that. And I want to make sure that it's chilled. So after about 45 minutes in the freezer, our temperature is below 35 degrees. It's partially frozen, and it's perfect. I'm going to be grinding this all together on a 6mm plate. And just remember, keep your equipment cold, keep your meat cold. It's going to keep the fat from smearing. And once I get that ground up, I'm going to put it back in the freezer to chill it once again. And this is what our spice profile is going to look like. We've got some mace, coriander, and caraway. We've got some dextrose. Now that's going to feed the starter culture. And we're going to add a little bit of sea salt with some cure number 2, because this project is going to take slightly over 30 days. The starter culture we're going to be using is Flavor of Italy. This is a great fermenting starter culture for your fermented sausages. And all we're going to do is for every 5 pounds of meat, we're going to use a half a teaspoon per quarter cup of water. Just set that to the side, let it rehydrate for about 30 minutes. So now it's time to mix all of our ingredients together. So in a stand mixer, I'm just going to add my seasonings and get that mixed up just a little bit. And while that's mixing, I'm going to slowly incorporate my starter culture. And that's it. And we're going to mix this for about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, until the mixture gets really tacky, really sticky, at which point we're going to go ahead and load our hopper. And I want to make sure that I get it packed in there really tight. This will help me minimize air pockets while we're stuffing our casing. And while I'm stuffing the casing, I'm going to do it relatively loose. I'm not going to try to pack it in there, because what we're going to do here is while we're fermenting it, while we're smoking it, we're going to flatten it. And if you pack it too tight, then you run the risk of it rupturing. Now we can form our links, and then with a sausage pricker, I'm just going to go ahead and prick any air pockets that might have formed. This will also help expel any moisture during the smoking and fermenting while it's being pressed. Landjäger can be pressed a multitude of different ways. You're going to see how I did it for this particular video, but you could do it however you want. It really doesn't matter that much. I'm going to just go ahead and put it on one of my gratings for my smoker, and I'm going to put another grating directly on top of that, and then I'm going to put something heavy on both of those. Inside my smoker, I've got a 100-watt light that's controlled by a thermostat, and I'll show you that here in a second. This is our Landjäger being pressed by a tray of water, and over the course of the next 8 to 12 hours, that Landjäger is going to be smoked and fermented, and then it'll be ready to transfer to a drying tray. Let me show you the controller that controls that 100-watt light. This controller is incredibly simple. It's from Inkbird. You set the temperature you want. In this case, I've got it set at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can see directly above it is the actual temperature inside my chamber. I've got that 100-watt light plugged into the heating port on the outlet, and this controller basically turns that light on and off, regulating the temperature inside my chamber. And for this particular starter culture, I'm fermenting it at 75 degrees Fahrenheit. While it's fermenting, I'm going to go ahead and smoke it. And we're going to be smoking this with some pecan, some apple wood, using a cold smoke generator by smoking it. This thing's incredible. I've got it set to smoke for roughly about 8 hours, give or take. And this is going to deliver nice, consistent smoke through the entire fermentation period, basically throughout the entire night. It's about 11 o'clock at night as I'm finishing up right here. And this is what our setup is going to look like. That grating is going to allow that smoke to penetrate the top and the bottom of our Landjäger, and we're going to go ahead and close this thing down and check back in about 8 hours. It's now the next morning, about 7 o'clock in the morning. We're still getting beautiful cold smoke from our cold smoke generator, and it's now time to test the pH. This has been fermenting and smoking and being pressed all night long, and Flavor of Italy, it ferments your sausage incredibly fast. So depending on how much sugar you added and depending on the temperature, Usually a good time to check flavor of Italy is about 9 hours after you've began the fermentation process. So here's what we're going to do. We just took it out. Right off the bat, you can notice a texture change. The color is more vibrant and it smells wonderful. And all we got to do now is just make sure that we're in the right pH range. For flavor of Italy, what we're looking for is a 4.9 to 5.3. And the closer I can get to 4.9, the better. But anything in that range works. And if you happen to overshoot it, if you end up at 4.4 or 4.5, that's okay too. It's just going to be a little tangy, but still completely edible. So our pH was 5.0, absolutely perfect. I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the fermentation chamber and begin the process of drying it. And all we're going to do is put it in a modified refrigerator where the temperature is at 55 degrees Fahrenheit, also controlled by an Inkbird controller, and the humidity is roughly 80%. And that's it. This is where it's going to hang out for the next roughly 4 to 5 weeks. As your Landjäger begins to bloom inside your chamber, you're going to notice that the color is going to start to get darker. And if you like the way a smokehouse smells, you're going to love the way your chamber smells because it's going to smell smoky. This is what your Landjäger is going to look like after about 5 weeks. It's lost about 40% of its weight. It's firm to the touch, and it's time to go ahead and pull it out so that you can see what it looks like once it's finished. Landjäger is one of those snacks that's great for hiking, hunting, camping. If you're a traveler, you know, it keeps incredibly well. It doesn't need refrigeration, and it's absolutely delicious. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to be slicing it thin because I'm sharing it with a lot of people, but you don't even need to slice it. You can just bite off a chunk, pop it back in your backpack, and you're in business. I'm really happy with the way this Landjäger turned out. Now, you don't technically have to press it. A traditional Landjäger is going to be pressed, so it's going to have a slightly oblong, even rectangular look to it. This was only about 8 or 9 hours of pressing during the fermentation period. And now it's time to give it a taste. Here we go. Oh, wow, that's incredible. I love the fermented taste that the starter culture gives to this particular salami. You've got a really nice smoky flavor. The spice profile is subtle, and you can still get the presence of the beef and the pork. This is just an amazing piece of charcuterie. And that's how we make Landjäger. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to visit our website, twoguysandaCooler.com, where you can check out this recipe and many of our other recipes. If this is the first video that you've seen from our channel, we'd like to say welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. We'll see you in the next one.